Welcome to Going Through Health with Gordy and Zed.
Where wellness gets a fun twist. I'm Gordy Jenkins, a natural foods entrepreneur, and with me is Dr. Zed DeBout, a resident trained Stanford MD. We are former college swim teammates turned best friends, and now your guide to this crazy world of health trends and fitness hacks with a focus on getting the science right. Get ready for a wild ride. This is Going Through Health with Gordy and Zed. Good evening. Dr. Zed and I are opening up the gates of health for the first ever Fright Clinic, a GTH Halloween spectacular, where we'll explore spooky, unsettling tales of strange cures, eerie experiments, and haunting medical practices that will leave you questioning what's scarier, the illness or the cure. Then, through the darkness, we shine a science spotlight on the rigorous ways your ancestors used to test for witches before we wrap up with a special Halloween edition of the Fast Fire Questions. But before we get spooky with it, Zed, I know you're a costume guy. Give us one of your most memorable or perhaps embarrassing Halloween costumes as a kid.
I'm just dying. You coming out of the gate. You're a costume guy. Do you want to tell the listeners what you look like right now?
Well, I might have face paint on right now.
Gordy looks like if there was a magical little Dia de los Muertos raccoon in a Disney movie.
I get the dark around my eye. I have white face paint on. I have black around my eyes. I'm a skull. I'm supposed to be a skull, Zed. All right. Sorry that I have a little bit of festivity.
You look like a spooky little funny Tim Burton sidekick. Is that better?
Like that.
You look like a skull.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to go for.
Okay.
It was stressful. You know how I was trying to get ready for this episode. I was trying to make sure I was in the zone and stuff like that. I'm trying to get the environment quiet. I'm having serious discussions about what I want to do afterwards with my wife, who just put this makeup on me. I'm like, no, babe, we got to, I'm just like, look at myself in the mirror, and I'm just, I don't know. Anyone, this is a good reason to follow us on Instagram if you don't already. I'm sure you'll get
it really is.
a few clips.
and I feel like an idiot because I'm not even wearing anything.
Oh, good, because you definitely look like an idiot. You're the one who looks like an idiot.
Perfect.
You are. But I mean, you are a costume guy, though. What are some of your favoritos?
Well, this one definitely isn't a favorite one. It's definitely a most embarrassing one. But just to qualify, this was a very ignorant, ill-conceived costume, but it was middle school, and I decided to dress up as a pimp. And to be clear, I didn't really know the full job description of a pimp. I just thought it was like a guy that dressed in fun clothes and kind of like danced around with his cane. So kind of more of a male Mary Poppins than
Actually, I think that is a lot like what pimps in like the 2000s were kind of like male. Like in the mainstream media, they were male Mary Poppins.
Yeah, chimney cherub, something like that. Yeah.
Mary Poppins caps in your ass.
Yeah, so I'm dressed up with this stupid faux fur boa and like a big hat and bright green corduroys or something. I go to this middle school party, and I was crushing on this older girl at the time. She was like 60. No. She was like an 8th grader or something. But so I show up to the party, and there's this party game where people can eat hot peppers, and I was like, perfect. Time to show how true pimps do it. And so I take a bite of this pepper, and at first I'm like, yeah, no problem. And then it's doing the thing where it's building, and I can literally feel my tongue melting into the back of my mouth. And I get this huge urge. I was like, I cannot be here anymore. And the girl's sitting right there, but I had to throw all caution to the winds. And I remember leaving the party and going and sitting in, so maybe this was high school, yikes, and going and sitting in a car outside. It's cold, it's October. And I'm just like sitting in the car, like drinking from a water bottle, just like rocking back and forth. And then she comes out to check on me. And it's just the most
what's wrong, little pimp?
Yeah. And spoiler alert, ended up not marrying her. She did not marry me. She's not my wife.
Wasn't for lack of trying, though.
No, there's literally nothing more I could have done. But yeah, how about you?
I mean, there's some fun ones, but I remember what sticks out to me the most was the last time I went trick or treating, because it was just like, I don't know. I feel like my brain was more like my brain now than like a child's brain at that point. Like I start. Are you familiar with what a moose knuckle is, Zed?
No.
Well, you know, like camel toe, but for men.
Yeah. Oh, okay, gotcha. I think I have heard that before.
Let's just say this Spider-Man suit that I was wearing might have been a little small. I was tall, perhaps, as a child. It was very clear that it should be my last time doing it, and like halfway through, I realized it. Like, just like, what is going on here? I look ridiculous, you know. And then I look at myself as I talk to you today, and I see that I've grown so much.
And tune into Instagram to see Gordy's moose knuckle.
That's my secret page, yes.
On your Finsta.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Gordy, do you want to tell us how the show will work today? Let me catch you while you're drinking water. you crafty little raccoon.
So yeah. I gotta wash everything in the water first because I'm a raccoon. No, I'm not a raccoon. I'm a skull or skeleton.
Sorry.
I'm a skeleton.
Yes, you are.
But no, we are. So we're doing things a little differently today. No soap note, no strict format. Just Zed and I trading off some of the weirdest, darkest, and most bizarre tales from the world of medicine. From spooky science experiments to terrifying treatments, we've dug up stories that will make your skin crawl. So Zed, are you ready to jump into this creepy medical rabbit hole with me?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, a creepy medical rabbit hole. It's like a lab rabbit's house.
Just down there with like sharp little canines.
Yeah. Well, let me kick things off, Zed. Let's set the scene here, all right? It's a foggy, moonlit night in 1820s Edinburgh, Scotland. The kind of night where you wouldn't be caught dead. Well, you might be caught dead, but you wouldn't want to be. Because if you were recently deceased, you might just find yourself on a one-way trip to medical school. And not in a good way, Mom. That is right, folks. I'm talking about the grisly trade of body snatching, where in the pursuit of science, your eternal rest might be more of a nap. You see, back then, medical students needed fresh bodies to poke and prod, but there was a little snag. The law only allowed bodies from executed criminals to be dissected.
Wah, wah.
Yeah, right? And as it turns out, Zed, bad news, there are way fewer executions than there were eager young doctors ready to slice and dice. So, enter the Resurrectionists, a group of entrepreneurial ghouls who saw an opportunity in the fresh soil of Edinburgh's graveyards. By the way, Zed, do you know the difference between a graveyard and cemetery is?
Graveyard, cemetery. I do not.
I think they're like basically the same thing. All right. Now, no, I heard graveyards could be like attached to a church most of the time, but not always. But like generally, graveyard would be attached to a church, and a cemetery would just be
standalone.
But I think that, there's exceptions. But hey, either way, the point was they were thinking, why let a perfectly good corpse go to waste? Now, most resurrectionists stuck to grave robbing. Morally questionable, sure, but hey, all they were doing was some late night digging. Except for two blokes who decided that digging was way too much unnecessary work. Meet William Burke and William Hare, the overachievers of the resurrectionist world. Hare operated a boarding house, and he actually had an elderly boarder die. And that's what gave him the idea, because it's like, this guy owed him rent, and this old guy just died. But like, instead, Hare just got ching dollar signs in his eye, like a cartoon character. And he was like, oh, boom, do I have an idea? So these two men, So these two men, William Burke and William Hare, didn't just dig up bodies, they made their own. And by that, I mean they killed people, Zed, in case you thought I was implying that they had children together. No, they decided to kill people. They made the bodies. So you just imagine this conversation, It's like, hey, William, why we have to wait for all these people to die naturally? What if we just, help them along a little bit? And he's like, yeah, well, I swear on me mum, William. You always save on shovels, wasn't it? So that's how they decided.
Just those classic Cockney landlords in Edinburgh.
In Edinburgh.
But no, I mean, I've always said inflation, the evil stepmother of invention.
You have always said that. So they set up shop, luring unsuspecting victims, mostly the poor, the lonely, and those who wouldn't be missed. Sound like anyone you know, Zed? I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
Come on.
But anyway, they found these unsuspecting victims and promptly smothered them. Zed, do you know what twerking is?
Yeah, word sounds familiar. You were showing me your TikTok search history, and I think it came up like a million times.
That wasn't it. Wrong. But how about burking? They had their own gruesome method of murder, which became known as burking. Their technique was disturbingly efficient. Burke would smother their victims by covering their mouths and noses while hair held them down. And this left no visible marks or injuries on the body. Important if you're planning to sell the corpse to an anatomy school where damaged product might arouse suspicion. And Burke reportedly would then sit on the chest of his victims, using his weight to keep them from breathing, while Hare, was helping out with the grisly deed.
Hare just like, hey, Burke, do you think sometimes we could call it herring? Like Burke's like, Hare, my dear boy, are you listening to yourself? Herring's a fish. It simply would never work.
It's already herring. Yeah, burking. It's burking. So yeah, overall it was quick, quiet, and clean. Their favorite customer, none other than Dr. Robert Knox, one of Edinburgh's top anatomists, who, let's just say, wasn't asking too many questions about where these fresh bodies were coming from. This guy was more interested in his next anatomy lecture than trivial details like, hey, when did this person die? I couldn't help but notice today's newspaper in his pocket.
Cause of death? Burking.
Okay. Like in a horse accident? Yes. Burke and Hare's victim count, 16. 16
God.
People who all met their untimely end, not because of illness or accident, as we should all be so lucky to go, but because of good old-fashioned greed. Now, the two might have kept their scheme going for longer, if not for one tiny little hiccup. They got caught. They are stupid idiots, said. Indeed, Burke and Hare's grim enterprise finally unraveled when they got sloppy. And this is how serial killers go all the time. Like, through the ages, it's like they get cocky and they get overconfident and they like leave a wrench or whatever serial killers leave at places. A comb, hairbrush, I feel like lipstick. I don't know, something odd like that.
Driver's license.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Just gonna leave this here, my passport.
Where the fuck is my license? At the DMV.
So their last victim was a woman named Margaret Doherty, who was lured into Hare's lodging house, where they killed her in the usual fashion, burking. But this time, their greed got the better of them. You got to get that side hustle, Airbnb style, so got to kill those lodgers. Because you got to, at the same time, you can't like miss out on money, right? So while they were doing all this and keeping this lady stuffed under their bed, they allowed two of Hare's lodgers to stay overnight in the room next door. And so these lodgers became suspicious when they noticed Margaret's sudden disappearance and spotted her body stuffed all spooky-like under the bed. And so word quickly spread, and soon Burke and Hare were arrested. Turns out, Zed, hiding a body under your bed is not a great long-term strategy, believe it or not. But Hare, always the gentleman, quickly turned on his partner in crime, cutting a deal to save his own skin. Burke, on the other hand, was sentenced to death by hanging. So he got the name, but he also got we call it burking, but he also got hanged. He got burked, if you will. like punked. You just got burked. For irony, Zed, this is true. Burke's body was then publicly dissected in front of an eager crowd at the same medical school where he sold his victims.
Wow.
The moral of the story? If you're going to be a body snatcher, just don't get too greedy or you might end up on the slab yourself. And just to add a scary cherry on top, Burke's skeleton is still on display in Edinburgh today as a permanent reminder that you shouldn't steal corpses, I guess. I don't know. Don't die. Yeah, this could be you. Don't do it, idiot. Don't die. Now, I know what you're thinking. Gordy, Papa Halloween. How do they stop this madness? Well, the people of Edinburgh got smart. They invented something called a mort safe, which sounds like a safe place to keep your morts, right? Exactly. Now, basically, it was an iron cage they put over graves to keep people from stealing grandma, or potentially saving the world from grandma in a zombie apocalypse situation. Either way, I know when I die, Zed, I really hope to be lowered into the ground in one of these old shark cages like this.
Zombie finally like clawing its way out of the coffin, getting the bar. It's like, oh, I'm so sick of this shit.
Yeah, right. It's like, oh, it's so boring, tiny. Okay, but despite the best efforts of iron bars and the occasional nosy neighbor, body snatching continued for years, all in the name of science. After all, those young doctors had to learn somehow. Nothing like a good old-fashioned grave robbing to boost your medical school resume. I think that I remember that. Just another reminder that back in the days, Ed, science and spookiness were often very close bedfellows, or in this case, dead fellows.
Yeah. I will say, late night anatomy lab review could get a little creepy. There was I can remember a particularly scary series of events where I was there late one night studying anatomy, and then the next day I got a few points off on my anatomy test. Terrifying.
Ooh, that must have been terrifying. And you studied and everything?
Yeah, I was there late.
Oh my god! You probably didn't sleep enough. That is terrifying. Zed. That's the tale of the body snatchers of Edinburgh, Zed. And I would love to hear more of your grave robbing stories from medical school, but there's no time for that at all. What do you have for us on this All Hallows Eve?
Gordy, you spooky skeleton raccoon. Do I have something for you? All right, so the Dancing Plague of 1518. So this was the original Thriller music video, before music videos, and potentially what the townspeople of Footloose were so worried about. And never seen Footloose, but I'm pretty sure that is true. All right, so
yeah, I think that's right.
This is one of the most bizarre and unsettling events in medical history, and it struck Strasbourg, France in July 1518, aka the happenstance, freelance, fancy pants, prance, trance, and dance of France. And that's a historical name. Right.
Yeah.
So it all started when the local residents downloaded TikTok. Nah. It's believed to have begun when a single woman named Frau Truffaut started dancing fervently in the street. All the single ladies. Put your hands up. All right. Within a week, dozens more joined her, and eventually the number is estimated to have grown to about 400 people. The dancing continued for days, sometimes weeks, leading to exhaustion, heart attack, and even death. So, quote from this article, "A Forgotten Plague: Making Sense of Dancing Mania" by John Waller. One thing contemporary and modern writers have agreed: those who danced did so involuntarily. They writhed in pain, screamed for help, and begged for mercy. Hey, the DJ must have been playing Charlie XCX. Hey, come on now.
Have mercy. I was thinking James Brown. Get up now.
hey, I'm worried about Maurice. He's writhing in pain and begging for mercy. Yeah, he's fine. That's just how he dances.
Well, I didn't know that Frau Truffaut was such a dancer, huh?
Wow.
Look at her go. Wow, she's really been dancing for a while now. I wish we could stop.
We shouldn't leave her out there on her own. But no, so fascinatingly, during this outbreak and previous ones, yes, there were multiple. The prevailing notion was that dancing was the affliction, of course, but also the cure. So that makes sense. During this particular plague, the authorities mandated that the dancers go on dancing day and night, and went so far as to commission a special stage in the heart of the city where the dancing horde could move freely. They even hired professional dancers and musicians to keep everyone in constant motion. It's really kind of the world's first group fitness class.
I was thinking it was the first safe injection site. You know, it's where you could do your IV drugs safely. It's like, hey, if you're gonna dance, just do it where we know you're safe. For God's sakes, quit dancing in places we can't find you. I'm so sick of finding people dead wearing their dancing shoes just in some random corner.
We got music here. We got instructors. Let's do this right.
It's safe. It's well lit.
People trying to leave the dance floor, but they start playing your jam. Hold up. I'm back in, baby. Go back in.
Yeah, it's the worst thing. The DJ is like, he's a public menace.
Yeah. Or people like, seriously, I don't want to dance anymore. I feel fine. The mayor like stamping his foot and pointing at the dance floor. You got this. You are my dancing queen. Young and sweet. Only 17 more days of dancing. But no, so Gordy, you're not going to believe this, but the policy was a disaster. From the dramatic escalation in the epidemic, it seems the strategy only fanned the fires of dancing contagion. The authorities, a little late, but they reversed course and pivoted to actually banning the music they had, of course, instituted in the first place. Sorry
to interrupt you, but it's funny to think about how like trends like spread back then. Like they don't have like media. It just like has to be like, God,
you have to see it.
My wife comes home and just talks about the people dancing one more night. It's all I hear about, the people dancing. Like the fact that it's like such a craze, and it's like eventually it's like 4 days after hearing about the dancing, you're starting to like tap your foot at home, and you're like, okay, I know I clowned on him, but something about this is feeling a little good. Yeah.
But no, they're telling the band to stop playing, and they're just like, hey, everyone, music's canceled. Thanks for coming out tonight. You guys are insane in the best way. The energy has been awesome. Audience just screaming and writhing.
Please, no encore.
Yeah, please, just go.
For the love of God, just go.
But this could be a really great test at your next party to see who the real choreomaniacs are. Just stop the music and see who keeps dancing.
Is that a problem that you have at a lot of parties, not knowing who the choreomaniacs are?
No, it is a huge problem.
That's fair. That's fair. Very fair.
Okay, so it started in July, and the event is thought to have eventually wound down in September, ostensibly when participants' moms tried to join and show off moves popular in their youth. Oh, mon Dieu, maman. I would dance. Would you dance if your mom joined?
Yeah, hell yeah. Right?
Hell yeah.
I mean, not for a normal amount of time, not like until like city officials became concerned.
But yeah, so kind of like you were talking about earlier in terms of how this type of thing is spread. So modern theory suggests that it might have been caused by stress-induced mass hysteria. One of the other posited theories is ergot poisoning, which, as regular listeners will know, is a hallucinogenic mold that grows on damp rye.
Shout out gluten episode.
Hell yeah. So stress. So same paper quoted as saying the people of Strasbourg and its environments had a lot of acute distress in this period. So there had been a succession of appalling harvests. The grain prices had been high for over a generation. There was syphilis. There was recurrence of leprosy and the plague. So a lot of bad things going on. And
that's stressful.
It is stressful. Somewhat related, and interestingly, there are accounts of possession rituals where these come from everywhere from the Arctic to the Andes to the Caribbean. And these show that people are more likely to enter a trance state if they expect it to happen, and that those entranced participants behave in a ritualistic manner. So their thoughts and motions are shaped by their cultural, spiritual beliefs, etc. That's kind of reflected here because a variety of sources show that a dread of this sort of punitive dancing affliction had formed part of the collective consciousness of the people of this specific geographical area, so of the Rhine and Moselle valleys. And those living near these commercial waterways actually shared this profound fear that wrathful spirits would be able to inflict a dancing curse. So that's why they think they saw these reoccurring plagues of prancing and dancing.
That one kind of goes into our placebo episode too, about like the belief effect and like, expecting a certain response to
exactly
something, and then getting that response, especially when it has like the ritualistic elements involved too.
Yeah, that sort of nocebo, and it taking the form of what we fear almost. But yeah, on All Hallows Eve, when the very fabric between worlds begins to tear, beware the extremes to which fear of the supernatural can lead us. And if you see a group of people dancing in agony, it's probably just a social media trend, and you don't have to join them unless the authorities hire a DJ and make you.
Wow. So that was spooky. That one really got me shake, rattle, and rolling. Or should I say, they told us the real boogie, man. Boogie people.
Oh, yeah.
But let's just hear from our sponsors. Sorry. Hey folks, it's Crazy Carl. Looking for a deal on premium human cadavers? Then come on down to Crazy Carl's Cadaver Emporium, where our prices are so low it's almost criminal. We've got fresh bodies, slightly used bodies, and everything in between, all priced to move. Need a specimen for your anatomy class? We've got them. Dissection practice? No problem. At Crazy Carl's, we promise fast, reliable delivery, whether from the hospital, the cemetery, or places we can't legally mention. With our no paperwork, no hassle, guarantee you get what you need, no strings attached, so don't wait. Come on down to Crazy Carl's Cadaver Emporium today, where every body matters. Welcome back to the Fright Clinic, everyone. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and rate us 5 spooky stars on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. New episode Monday morning at
What was that?
Going Through Hell. No, I actually just caught at Going Through Hell podcast on Instagram. So I caught my what I was wearing. I forget that I was wearing. I have face paint on, and I caught myself, and I stopped. I was like, "Oh, who is that? Who is that genius?" All right, modern Dolly.
We are talking GTH Halloween Spectacular. It's your turn to share what you found going through health or hell this week. Get it?
I get it. I like that.
Gives me an idea.
Listen, you can't talk about spooky medicine without mentioning the monster study. I was worried I was gonna have to add sound effects, so I feel like I'm good.
No, we have a monster here.
Let's take the old GTH time machine back to 1939, a time when science was sometimes less about ethics and more about throwing caution to the wind, or should I say, to the orphans.
Uh-oh. Oh no.
That doesn't even make sense as a phrase. Throw caution to the orphans. Here. Okay. All right. Our setting. Davenport, Iowa. Our main character, Wendell Johnson, a respected speech pathologist at the University of Iowa. And what did Johnson want to study? Stuttering. Seems innocent enough, right? Well, buckle up, because this story takes a hard left into Creepy Town real quick. Johnson believed that stuttering wasn't something people were born with, but rather something that could be induced through fear and suggestion. You know, just like casual dinner conversation. So like an experiment that would later be dubbed the Monster Study, a title that should give you a hint about how this study turned out. Johnson decided to test his theory on a group of orphans. Because why not, Zed? I know we tested this podcast on orphans initially. Who's going to stop me? Apparently ethics committees weren't really a thing in the 1930s. They not like the ethical orphan podcast testing that we do with, control groups. So here's what went down. Johnson and his graduate student, Mary Tudor, which is like a freaking classic historical woman name, right? Like Mary Tudor, you don't know any Tudors these days, do you?
No. Not many Marys either.
Yeah, if your name's Mary Tudor, please throw us an email, and we'll drop that at the end of the episode. So keep listening.
Actually, I did have to get a tutor for that anatomy class.
Yeah,
Worth it.
All right. So here's what went down. Johnson and his graduate student, Mary Tudor, selected 22 orphans for this study. The kids were split into 2 groups, 11 on offense, 11 on defense. No, just kidding. But half of them already had speech issues like mild stuttering, while the other half didn't and spoke otherwise normally. But that wasn't enough for Johnson. Oh no. He wanted to see if he could create stuttering where there was none. So one group of kids was praised for their speech, like, "Oh, you're doing great, little Jimmy," and the other group was pretty much psychologically tormented, constantly told things like, "Yeah, your speech is terrible, little Stanley. You sound awful. You're a stutterer."
And you'll always be a stutterer.
Your father was a stutterer, and you're gonna be a stutterer too. You're gonna never leave this town, just like your old man. You're gonna be stuttering your whole life through this town. Yeah.
What was the upside of this?
Yeah, except. Now before we even go further, you could just say, the thought process here. It's just like I could see Mary just being like, "Hey, Wendell, what if we just, encourage the kids?" And he's just like, "No, Mary. Let's destroy their confidence instead, for
Yeah,
science.
the
And she's like, well, yeah, that's true.
the famously overconfident orphans.
Yeah, exactly.
Well adjusted.
Yeah, like, no, it's a perfect representative population. Yeah, exactly. So as you might guess, the results were a bit of a horror show. The kids who had been falsely told they were stutterers began to actually develop speech problems. Surprise, surprise, when you tell a child they're speaking poorly over and over again, it actually messes with their self-esteem, leading to, you guessed it, stuttering. Even those with no prior speech issues started showing signs of anxiety, hesitation, and other symptoms of speech disorders. And this wasn't just some quick summer camp experiment either. Did your summer camp not have experiments? That's normal, right? Summer camp experiments.
Yeah, well, yeah. There's the stuttering one. The floating one.
All right, yeah, you did that. All right, good. So yeah, but these kids, as we laughed, said these kids lived with these effects for years. And to add shittiness to a shitty situation, Wendell Johnson never published the study. I imagine somewhere along the way he was like, "Ooh, I got a little too far," and he just like slipped the paper into like a desk and just like, all right, back to speech pathology in a normal way or whatever.
About to hand it over to the editor and just like, let me just read over this one more time.
Wow, that comes off a little different than I was thinking. Orphan is such a harsh word that they use. So fast forward to 2001, the world got a chilling reminder of what happened. Investigative reporter Jim Dyer, working for the San Jose Mercury News, stumbled upon the study while digging through archives at the University of Iowa. Tucked away in the basement, this scientific skeleton in the closet saw the light of day. And Dyer wasted no time publishing a series of explosive articles. As he reached out to the original test subjects, or in some cases their children who were still alive, he uncovered pretty heartbreaking stories of long-lasting psychological scars. Several of the orphan children, now adults, described lives marked by speech anxieties, social withdrawal, and self-doubt. Mary Tudor. Yeah, that's right. Yay. We did it. Mary Tudor, at age 84, apologized for her actions in an interview with Dyer. Wendell Johnson, already dead, did not apologize due to being dead. In 2001, following Dyer's expose, the University of Iowa formally apologized for the monster study, calling it regrettable under any circumstances. But then also, we're quick to point out that research standards were different back in 1939. So it's like, it's regrettable under any circumstance, but let me just tell you the circumstances here, people.
the dean coming out. We are sorry for the, looking down at his notes, monster study.
Like, seriously, guys? This is what it's called?
Maybe brand this a little differently. But to be fair, it was cool to be a pimp back then.
So it's really chilling. It's the cold, calculated nature of it all. Johnson wasn't trying to cure studying. No, he was trying to create it. And he used some of the most vulnerable members of society. Sure, it wasn't ghouls or goblins, no, but it was much worse. Orphans. No. There's no reanimated corpse here, just real kids, real trauma, and real consequences that lasted for years. So the monster study serves as a reminder of a time when scientific curiosity overstepped its bounds in the most unsettling of ways. And while we can hopefully agree that this kind of experimentation should never happen today, it's a good lesson in how science, when unchecked, can become a real-life horror story.
Well, to be fair, I've heard the orphan labs, the orphans of the orphan labs at Harvard are treated very well.
Okay, good. Oh, there's nice orphan mills that they feed into or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay, good. But so those are that's what I found a little spooky. But what have you found spooky going through health this week?
All right, here's some things that I came across that I found spooky. All right,
thank you.
I have the legend of Mercy Brown, the vampire of Rhode Island. In the late 19th century, New England was gripped by a vampire panic, now largely attributed to the merciless fangs of tuberculosis, which was not well understood at the time. I think the recurring pattern here is attributing things we don't understand to evil powers. But yeah, so the timeless medical conundrum of bacterial disease versus Dracula munchies.
Ooh.
almost rhymes.
Yeah, that's almost there.
One of the most famous cases involved the aforementioned Mercy Brown from Exeter, Rhode Island. In 1892, several members of the Brown family succumbed to tuberculosis.
So she got tuberculosis. They used to call it consumption, but now they call it tuberculosis.
You got that tuberculosis. Right. But yeah, so she died of tuberculosis. Sad. Also, like Gordy said, known as consumption at the time. And then when Mercy died, townspeople, influenced by local folklore, again, huge threat to society, believed she was a vampire preying on her surviving brother Edwin, who was also ill. Me, one of the other dead Brown family members, gesturing accusatorily at Mercy, just like, it's her. It's not me. It's
Mercy.
It's Mercy. But yeah, so in a desperate attempt to save Edwin, Mercy's body was exhumed, not by Burke, but by the villagers, and her heart was removed and burned. As you do.
What? Yeah,
this gruesome act was thought to stop the vampire's curse. Unfortunately, Edwin did die shortly after, and the incident remains a somber reminder of how fear and superstition can influence medical practices. Hey, babe. Yep. We just dealt with the vampire masquerading as our dead and buried daughter. Yeah, let's just say there was no mercy. How's Edwin? He's up and about. No, just or like
how's Edwin doing? I'm guessing Edwin's feeling a little bit better right now, right? It's like, no, sorry,
no.
Edwin died.
or the vampire with like the coughing attack, just like I must have gotten tuberculosis from Edwin, that little shit.
I like the name Mercy Brown too. That sounds like a saying. Like a sweet Mercy Brown. Sweet sassy Molassie. It's Mercy Brown. I am not ready for this podcast.
We got that tuberculosis, sweet Mercy Brown.
Sweet Mercy Brown. So that was in America. We were digging up bodies and ripping their hearts out and then being like, Edwin, thank us later. And then Edwin dies and they go, and then some other guy's like, I told you it was her spleen, not her heart.
No, seriously, it was awful. But yeah, that's the fear. The fear will get you. All right, you ready for our next case, Gordy?
Let's go.
All right, so I got the curious case of George Foster and galvanism. Definitely not how it's pronounced. Definitely George Foster. All right, in the early 19th century, the idea of reanimating the dead captured the public's imagination, partly due to experiments with galvanism, which, as we all know, is the use of electric currents to stimulate muscle contractions. This one specific case involved George Forster, and he was executed by hanging in 1803 for murder. His body was handed over to, here you go, to Dr. Giovanni Aldini, a pioneer in galvanism, and the nephew of Luigi Galvani, one who had discovered the phenomenon. Establishing care with Dr. Giovanni Aldini as your PCP. And he's just like, yeah, I just need your group number and please sign this consent for reanimation.
What?
Excuse me? He's like, I take care of you. It's no problem. Worst case scenario, you die, but I'll bring you back. It's no worries.
Right there. Sign right there. Right there. Just your initials.
So Dr. Giovanni Aldini, he had Forster's body before this audience at the Royal College of Surgeons in London. And Aldini applied electrodes to Forster's corpse, causing it to convulse, open an eye, and even raise an arm. Yes, Mr. Forster, you had a question? Yes, Mr. Forster. Don't wink at me. Right. So these dramatic demonstrations really fueled the scientific curiosity at the time, but also public fears about reanimation. And these types of demonstrations are thought to have influenced literature, such as Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Oh,
so, yeah.
I've heard of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Frankenstein. Frankenstein. Frankenstein, not again. What have you done?
Oh, silly Frankenstein. His big boots and his neck with poor mobility. What? Why did I go that way?
Frankenstein, have you eaten all the strudel again?
So he's zapping people in front of an auditorium.
Yeah.
I'm guessing, and he's just like, "Hey, watch! Now I'm gonna shock this bag of meat and watch its arm go up, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, he's alive." He
Dance
always
for me,
did that when he was
puppets.
alive. Yeah.
And that was the first Shock the Doc.
So I look scary into this mic right
You
now.
do. I keep catching glimpses of you.
Wow.
Actually, my dog's been out and about, and while you were telling one of your stories, I felt a weird touch on my leg, and I got spooked, but it was just my dog. That's another scary story.
You live a terrifying life, Zed. And honestly, it's freaking me out a little bit, so I need to share with you the kicker. So in the early 1920s, nothing quite screamed luxury like owning a watch with a glowing dial. So the secret behind these glowing watches, radium. Yes, that same radioactive element that would later become infamous. Radium, though, was the new wonder material. It made things glow in the dark. It was being hailed as a medical marvel, and some people even thought it might extend your life. So naturally, when it was discovered that it could be used to paint watch dials, everyone wanted one. Now, someone had to paint these dials, though. So enter the Radium Girls, a group of young women, many of them in their teens, who worked in watch factories, carefully applying radium-infused paint to the faces of watches. I bet, on a side note, I bet the last hour of your shift really goes slowly working at a clock factory.
No kidding.
Right? It's like, oh man, it's that time still, huh? Brutal. So the factory managers taught these Radium Girls a technique called lip pointing, which involved placing the tip of the paintbrush between their lips to make a fine point before dipping it back into the radium-laced paint. So, it's like if you're like licking a shoelace before you put it through the eyelets or whatever, and so you're doing that with your radium paint all day.
Yeah, email us if you're licking your shoelaces.
Well, Zed, you can probably see where this is going. The girls were reassured, though, that radium was harmless. And so some even believed that it was healthy. After all, radium was being added to cosmetics. It was in toothpaste, and it was even in drinking water. I could actually see it, though. I mean, if you thought it was healthy, you'd be like, that shit is going to sell. Like, that is glow. That's going to melt someone's face. And they're like, let's change the wording on how you describe that.
I am Tyradium.
Oh, man. Then we get that song on? All right. So this is all a good idea after all. Never mind. No. But so at one point, radium was marketed as the secret to youthful skin. Got to get that glow, Zed. Which also reminds me of a previous episode, that ultra-weak photon emission from Shock the Doc, from the rhabdomyolysis episode. We all glow a little bit, but these people really glowed. These Radium Girls, like the extra Spice Girls. So these young women, diligently working day after day, did what they were told. They licked their brushes and went about their jobs. And here's where things took a really spooky turn. After long shifts of painting, they actually began to glow. Their clothes, their hair, even their skin would light up in the dark. They became walking glow sticks, which at first seemed like a fun perk of the job. They'd go out dancing after work and literally light up the room. I mean, it's pretty. I feel like people would still do that, even knowing
100%.
Even knowing that you're poisoning yourself.
Oh, sorry, I'm late, guys. Late night at the watch factory. Oh my God, Rebecca, you're glowing. She's like, oh, this whole thing.
I saw you coming from a mile away. Good.
You rave troll.
But soon the fun faded. Those glow sticks don't really last long before they just kind of turn into a sickly looking color. The radium turns out not so harmless after all. Wah, 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 wah. It was reported the first signs that something went wrong came when women started developing strange symptoms. I don't know why glowing didn't count as a strange symptom.
Kidding.
I'm glowing. This is my normal life. I'm always glowing. I'm glowing. This is normal.
Healthy and normal. Yeah, let me know if something else happens.
I don't work around anything that glows. Nothing else makes sense. And then their teeth began to fall out. Their jaws became swollen, and some of them developed painful ulcers that refused to heal. In the worst cases, their jaws and bones literally began to disintegrate, a horrifying condition that would later be known as radium jaw.
the worst superhero origin story ever. like, oh, what's your superpower? I'm really good at painting watches and slowly disintegrating.
Be like, or I was really good at
really
painting watches. Radium jaw. It sounds like an amateur wrestler that would like fight Spider-Man in his first bout. You know, it's like, here comes Bone Stars, like Radium Jaw. Or maybe that's a cool podcasting nickname. Like, oh, it's Gordy and Zed, the boys with the radium jaws.
Please let them disintegrate.
So doctors were baffled at first. No one had seen anything like this. Some suspected it was syphilis. Old friend of yours that you spoke of earlier.
Not a friend of
old
mine.
Friend. I just mean that you spoke of it earlier. Sorry, I got to frame.
I barely know the guy.
Because apparently the only thing scarier than radioactive poisoning was suggesting that these young, innocent women had sexually transmitted infections. Because that's a theme. But as the cases piled up, it became impossible to deny the glowing paint these women had been licking every day was killing them from the inside out. Could it be the glowing paint? No, that girl wouldn't sleep with me. I think it's syphilis. She just has syphilis. Like, no, she's been licking that paint for a while. It really seems like that. That's what I was saying.
A lot of other girls aren't having sex with you, and they are fine.
Most.
Almost all of them.
That is the common theme this episode, is like that basically just like young women like really daring to live their lives, and, like really pissing off people with like vested interest in radium or like the status quo, especially radium. So the radium wasn't just damaging their bones, it was emitting deadly radiation directly into their bodies. One of the most famous victims, Molly Maggia, suffered such severe bone decay that when doctors attempted to remove her infected teeth, they discovered her entire jawbone had turned to dust. That seems a little bit dramatic, but either way, she died short. They're like, well, let me just take a look at that jaw. Oh, and it's dust. No, but she died shortly after though. So maybe it did just kind of fall apart, and that's sad. And Molly Maggia is a fun, like Polly Pocket sounding name. Horrifying story of her jaw turning to dust though.
But she went out in a flash of light.
Yes, she did. She left a beautiful light. She burned the candle at both ends. She was the candle. The legal battle was grueling, but it wasn't just the horrific physical symptoms that made the story so eerie. When these women tried to seek justice, they were met with fierce opposition from their employers. The radium companies denied any wrongdoing, even going as far to say that the women had brought these health problems on themselves.
Classic.
Right?
What are the chances?
Yeah, you did this to yourself. Like, okay, Radium Factory. It sounds like what the Radium Factory would say, but I trust you for some reason.
Yeah, no one told you to do the lip pointing thing.
There's like one, like the boss who's also glowing over there. Like, all right, it was a good idea, but yeah, my bad. It wasn't until several years later when the surviving Radium girls banded together and fought for their right in court that the truth finally came to light. But in the end, the women won, actually. So this case, led to landmark changes in worker safety laws and helped establish the principle of corporate responsibility for employee health. They got those radium bastards. But the victory came much too late for the radium girls, who had already suffered irreversible damage. And now their story today just reminds us of the dangers of unchecked industrial practices and the terrifying lengths some companies will go to cover them up. If you ever visit a cemetery in Illinois, Zed, this is true that their bones are probably still glowing today, and a century later that their bones, those radium girls' bones, still glowing under there today.
Oh, truly, truly horrifying and spooky. Yeah, I didn't think the spookiest part of this would be corporate greed.
I should have said that up top, so I prepared you.
Truly horrifying.
But Zed, before we wrap up, my friend Dr. Zed, the Zedless Horseman, normally it's time for the GTH Big Three Bangers. But in the spirit of Halloween, we're going to witch things up a bit and give you our personal... You witched it up. That's good. We're going to witch things up and give us our own personal GTH Fright Clinic Big Three Bangers.
All right. Here are my GTH Fright Clinic Big Three Bangers of the things that scare me personally. Coming in third place, at-large serial killers. So, for some obvious reasons, but no. So when I was a bit of a bookworm growing up, and I read the Zodiac Killer as a very young lad, and just was left pretty horrified. And the worst part, of course, was they were still at large. And actually, now that I think of it, I also read Dracula at a very young age, which is maybe why vampires have left such a lasting impression on me. But the little weird thing is that my stupid brain, dumb kid logic was like, I'd be so relieved on rainy nights because I'd be like, oh, I can finally sleep. It's raining really hard outside, and no serial killer is going to be out and about when it's raining. Like, there's just no way. They're going to put on a raincoat and an umbrella, and then get in the house and then take off the raincoat and shake out the umbrella and then go murder me. No. So
what's funny though is I think I remember like actually reading a study like evolutionary science about why we even like rainy days, and essentially that being one of the reasons that like the rain pushing your smell down and kind of erasing your smell from the environment and stuff like that. So it kind of gives you the sense of like comfort. And that's why, you know, like birds
can't be tracked.
Like turkeys will come out, or I don't know where you live, but a lot of turkeys in Hawaii, you said.
A lot of chickens. So they're out. So their bird smell doesn't get left.
Yeah, I think they're like, all right, cool. This is my chance. Like I
Predators.
Kind of have like a clean slate
interesting.
Here, you know?
Huh. Maybe that's why. And to be fair, the Zodiac Killer never did kill me on a rainy night.
It worked.
All right. Coming in at number 2, parasitic fungus. Fungal infections in humans is already super hard to treat. Like, the shit gets everywhere. And yeah, just nasty. When you see these imaging of fungus in your lungs and liver, it's horrifying. And then plus, I think a lot of people are familiar now with the parasitic mind-body control thing, like you see in The Last of Us, which fascinatingly, maybe less people know this, is based on the actual phenomenon in insects where the fungus, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, it's known as zombie ant fungus colloquially, and it's an insect pathogenic fungus found mainly in tropical forests. And it was actually discovered in 1859, and it infects ants of a specific tribe, and it actually alters their behavior. So it infects these ants, and it forces them to leave their nests and attach themselves to leaves in conditions that are favorable for the fungus. So the whole thing takes about 4 to 10 days, and it culminates in this spooky, creepy ant's death, where the fungal fruiting bodies emerge from its head in like a science fiction horror scene, and then the spores are released to continue the cycle. So fungus up there for me.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you. I guess it's a new one for me too. Cool.
You're welcome. Sleep tight.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you.
And then third one, maybe the most insidious of them all. Climate change. Yeah, but no, climate change horrifies me all the time. I majored in environmental science in undergrad, and just after every class, I remember every lecture just being like, well, this is it. But obviously a little bit dramatic, but no, if you look up things like the Clathrate gun hypothesis, I don't know, I think just everything around how much unknown there is, how much potential chaos, all these unintended consequences, and then this learned helplessness, all these factors kind of converge to be terrifying for me. But yeah, Gordy, what about you?
No, that's a fair one. Just like leaving your class is for the day and just being like, I don't know if I'm going to do my homework. I don't know.
Exactly.
Like, does it matter?
Is this important? Yeah.
What's the point here? I'm just using paper, or just I'm just wasting resources. Being alive.
Using energy. Maybe I should just go find my friends and family and let's paint some watches.
Yeah, something good for the environment. All right, well, Zed, I got my top 3 things that scare me, and I'll just run through these really quick. Number 3. Being in a really tight space like this, I don't even really, just in case any of my enemies are listening to this.
Mm-hmm, smart.
Like, I have a very, very specific thing I'll tell you afterwards because I trust you, but I don't want this on the record. Just like even like AI one day, like combing through this, no, I'm not going to do it. So I maybe put that as 4 to the other thing.
But
them
claustrophobia related.
Yeah. Not even. I love that actually. All right, come on, man. That's it. Number two, being on a cruise ship that isn't fun and I can't do anything about it. You know what I mean? Just like, all right. And if it's like, I don't know, just like, what am I going to do? I feel trapped. I can't like go anywhere. No one's having fun. So the energy is going to be bad. Ugh.
And you have a stranger that keeps wanting to hang out and do things. Hey, Mr. Jenkins.
I'm like, I'm trying to paint my face. What don't you get? Oh, and my number one thing that scares me, said, it is having a nightmare about your plane crashing in specific detail the night before your flight. And then you start noticing those details from your dream actually happening in real life when you get to the airport. And then so you're just like sitting on the plane, not knowing whether you should like trust your gut and be like, oh, I should probably get off this plane. Or I should be like, but like I'm gonna look like a crazy person when I'm like, oh, I just gotta get off. I had a dream about all this. I mean, it's basically like the I think it's like the plot of the first scene of Final Destination, essentially. But it's just like, I think the idea of like having the dream and like knowing that you could like, you have to choose whether you want to like be freaked out about something that's probably just a dream. But then when you start noticing details adding up, you're like, holy crap, this isn't a dream. I've seen this happen before. This plane's gonna crash. You know, that one freaks me out because, said, I will add to this story. Recently, I had a dream, like a real like quick flash of an image in my dream that like this big box truck like went off the road at this place in my neighborhood and like hit me, but I like woke up right as it hit me. And then that next day I went for a run, just like in my dream. And like I ended up like running to that exact spot. I don't know why. It was so stupid of me. I ran right there, but that got me thinking, it's like target fixation. I'm like, well, I better run to that spot. Like I started off running like, well, I know where I'm not running today. And then and it's like 10 minutes later, I'm just like, why am I going back and forth on this street?
Wait, so has the plane thing happened to you?
No.
Oh, just a fear.
I just don't want it to happen.
Yeah. I like the idea of not wanting to get off the plane and risk looking like a freaking psycho.
Right?
Is so
That's
perfect.
What I mean.
That classic phenomenon of, oh, this is so dangerous, but like, God forbid, I'd rather die than look like a little awkward or be socially.
Right. And when the plane lands and you're like still in wherever you are, and you're just like, oh, would have been nice to be on that flight, but that dream, weird dream, huh?
That is spooky.
I'm so glad you said that.
Now that's spooky.
Now that is spooky. Well, Zed, I think it's time that we shift gears a little bit and talk about witches. Because I think it's been like, yeah, right. It's been one episode since we've talked about witches. I think we talked about witches in our Ginger episode. My mom said that she's like getting witch podcast recommendations, I think, after our Ginger one. I think we said witches a lot when we talked about the history of redheads. Shout out to Ginger episode. But as always today, this segment is not about the broomstick riding, black cat owning, potion brewing witches we love in movies. No, Zed, those aren't real. Today I'm talking about real witches. Ones who were hunted. Ones who were probably just innocent girls dealing with mental illness or dealing with normal teenage girl things, but were weird looking. But they were put through some of the most bizarre scientific tests imaginable back in the day. And spoiler alert, these tests have about as much scientific rigor as one of your Harry Potter sorting hat quizzes of what house is Zed.
hey. Big delineation between magic and science.
All right, fair enough. But anyway, that is why today the focus of our science spotlight is witch testing.
Science Spotlight. Yeah, science.
You know that is some standardized witch testing today, Zed. All right, so first up, get your witch swimsuits on, folks. It is the infamous swimming test. This one was based on the highly logical idea that witches were so evil, even water would reject them. Wait till these people find olive oil, said they are going to be furious. Hydrophobia was just so commonplace back then. King James of England helps break down the science for us in his 1597 New York Times bestseller, Demonology. You probably remember it from medical school, Zed. I'm sure you read the 1597 Demonology by King James. Well, he wrote, the water shall refuse to receive them in her bosom that have shaken off them the sacred water of baptism. So he's basically saying, like, since like the holy water just rolls right off these witches, they're not even like, you throw them into water, that water's gonna say spit them right back out, and they're gonna float.
I get it.
So here's how it worked: you'd be tied up, tossed into a river or pond, and left to either float or sink.
All right, quick question: why the tying up? Is that adding anything to it?
Well, I don't think that it's like witches can't swim versus can swim. You know what I mean? Because like anybody, it could be like, hey, she's swimming,
Anybody
and that's
right.
like that doesn't help. That could have just been a witch swimming.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know what I mean? It's tricky witch stuff.
Well, that's smart.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Control the
makes sense.
variables. Yeah.
Exactly. So they're tossed in, and they're like, "Hey, did you sink or float?" It's like a little "did I get got?" essentially. You know, if you floated, congrats, you were a witch. If you sank, well, good news, you were innocent, but probably also dead. This test, Zed, was particularly popular during the 17th century in Europe and colonial America, like the infamous Salem witch trials. You'd think a bit of floating, you know, could be seen as like a good, solid survival skill. But no, it meant you were in league with the devil.
Me, like a young woman of the time taking swimming lessons, and the instructor being like, "All right, take a big breath in and try floating on your back." And me be like, "Are you insane?"
I can't.
Oh, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I'm sinking.
I can't. Sources from the era, like Reginald Scott's The Discovery of Witchcraft, 1584, criticized the absurdity of these tests. So, like, there were people that were like, "This is stupid," but it didn't stop anyone. Yeah, like Reginald Scott didn't like really try hard enough, and Reginald Scott is like the most Reginald Scott, the most pretentious name ever. But Reginald Scott said about the dubious test, he said, "The bodies of women are lighter than those of men, yet they may sink or float according to the weight and measures of the bodies and like the manner of their casting into the water." So basically, that quote was him saying, "Yo, it's like they're like throwing some of these witches in like head first, and then they're kind of like gently like pushing them off." Like he's saying that like you're playing with densities. Like, come on, am I taking crazy pills here? Do you guys not see that you guys like pushed that other girl underwater? Like,
you tied a rock to her.
Yeah, it's like, am I the only one seeing this?
Everyone's just like, "Get out of here, nerd."
Yeah.
Are you a witch?
Yeah, that's probably. I mean, that's
sounds like something a witch would say.
Up with them. Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, I couldn't help but notice you have resting witch face. So yeah, he thought the whole thing was absurd. And he was like, "It is a wonder to see how in this age of so great incredulity, such barbarous and uncivil kind of people do still maintain and defend their superstitious practices." So he's just like, "You freaking morons!" But that was the swimming test. Next, we have the prick test. The prick test.
That's the one Elon Musk got 110% on.
He won that one. Yes, he did. This one's a real gem. Zed, it was believed that witches had a devil's mark on their body. Do you know what a devil's mark is? You ever heard of that?
No.
All right. Well, it is a spot on your body that can't feel any pain. For me, it is the skin underneath my elbow, my weenus. Oh no, I think that's for everyone. I don't know. That's what devil's. But so professional witch hunters or witch prickers would poke suspects with needles and knives looking for their mark. Like, be like, "I haven't found it yet. We're going to find one of these places." And so a fun fact, some witch prickers had retractable blades, making it easier to fake a no pain result. So like if you didn't scream when stabbed, ting tang, walla walla bing bang, you're a witch, Dr. Zed. And if you did scream, like you were still suspicious because like witches just could be faking the pain. So it's like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, it's just a waste of time.
Let's get those numbers up, but
yeah, gotta get our quota.
Jeez.
But with witches potentially faking their symptoms, it really just left those poor authoritarians with no choice but to err on the side of witch. According to James Sharp, in his book Instruments of Darkness, the prick test was widely used in England and Scotland in the 1600s. Zed, I think this quote from John Gall in his 1646 work, Select Cases of Conscience-Touching Witches and Witchcraft, really gets to the root of this witch hysteria. He was another critic who openly mocked the witch trials and the blind fear of witches. He said about the incompetence of witch finders, he said, "Every old woman with a wrinkled face, a furrowed brow, a hairy lip, a gobber tooth, a squint eye, a squeaking voice, or a scolding tongue is not only suspected but pronounced for a witch." So, sound like anyone you know?
It's like, damn, like John, appreciate it, but let's go easy on the
I
on
just
the
imagine
name
him
calling.
looking specifically at a
disgusted.
woman while watching.
Yeah.
Just be like, yeah, every old woman with a wrinkled face, furrowed brow. She's like listing something. Like the person's just like, can you stop looking at me, sir?
A stupid, ugly mole on their upper lip.
Yeah, a gobber. What's a gobber tooth?
Gobber
What do you
tooth.
think that is? What do you think a gobber? Just like a real snaggly tooth?
Well, I know the glowing gals did not have one.
No, their gobber teeth turned into gobber dust. But I hope you're hungry for this next one. Let's see if Mr. Nutrition or Dr. Nutrition, as you told me when we ended recording.
I did not.
Is the same. Let's see. No, you did not. Let's see if this is organic enough for you. The witch cake test. Believe it or not,
is more to my
involved
taste.
baking a cake made from the suspected witch's urine. Pee, said. In other words, this is cake made from witch's pee. The idea was that you'd feed this witch cake to a dog, and if the dog started acting possessed or the accused cried out in pain, then boom, you got yourself a witch. I remember Tituba, I think this happened to in The Crucible. Throw us an email if you remember that. Is that too specific of a meaningful listener engagement? All the fans of The Crucible, why don't you write me an email? No.
No, I think you're supposed to be specific with these,
Okay,
so that
good.
works.
Right. Please send me an email, guy. You know who you are, or lady. This little experiment popped up during the Salem witch trials, the witch cakes, and it was every as bit gross and bizarre as it sounds. And I hope those dogs honestly just didn't act all dramatic and like get those girls killed, you know, like your dog, like scaring you, hitting your leg, trying to tell me I'm a witch.
Also, the dog's just like, come on, like, why don't you guys taste the witch pea cake? Why do we have to be the ones to eat the cake?
It does. I mean, like knowing what I know about the world through like the internet, I feel like there's like a fucked up like fetish involved from some like creepy ass dude in Salem. It's like, yeah, no, give it to the dog. And I was like, all right, well, he is a man of science,
and I'll take the leftovers for my dog.
Just leave it. Joe, just leave it here. I'll throw it away. Just leave it. I'll take care of it. Goodbye.
Just frosting all over it.
I don't think they used a lot of frosting on that. So Zed, the next test I want to tell you about is the touch test, where accused witches were brought before their supposed victims. If the victim had a fit and touching the accused stopped it, ding, 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 witch confirmed. So it's like if you're freaking out, it's just basically stuff you can like fake and control. Like, oh, I'm so freaking out. I'm freaking out. Zed, you better not touch me. If you touch me, I'm going to stop. If you touch me and I stop, you're a witch. And then you like stop touching me and I just go, look at me, I stop. Looks like you're a witch. Get him, boys.
Oh, such a dick move.
Right? Such a dick move. Just like, just a game of tag with a little bit of mob hysteria mixed in there. And you know what, Zed? This was actually used extensively during the Salem witch trials. And surprise, surprise, it never cleared anyone.
Guilty until proven guilty.
Yeah, exactly. All right, and finally, Zed, we have witch weighing. You never ask a witch her weight or a goblin his salary. In 17th century England, witches were believed to weigh less than normal people. Doesn't this just get more sad with modern knowledge? It's like, this sick girl is a witch. Let's kick her out of the nest. Huzzah! We're so much more enlightened than animals.
This girl that already has consumption.
Yeah. She must be a witch. Like, something about her I hate. So yeah, naturally, if you were accused, you'd be weighed against a stack of Bibles or a metal weight. And if you weighed too little, any guess, Zed?
Witch?
Witch. 100% witch. Just like, could you be like, add a few more Bibles? All right, we're good.
Just step in on
How
the
many
scale.
Bibles? I'll tell you when.
With
That's a lot of Bibles. So the logic here, Zed, is there wasn't any logic, but it was a go-to tactic. And this ridiculousness is mentioned in Geoffrey Scare's Witchcraft and Magic in the 16th and 17th century Europe. And the witches apparently couldn't even gain weight properly. Did they lift? They didn't even lift.
yeah, they're trying to bulk. This sounds like something a very cantankerous, jealous woman is just like, ooh, Samantha, I'm gonna get her, that skinny little witch. Hang hang on.
So yeah, I just got to figure out how many Bibles she weighs. So Zed, what did all these scientific tests have in common in our science spotlight today? Well, 100% success rate in convicting innocent people of witchcraft and a 0% success rate in, being actual science. These tests were designed with the kind of logic that says heads, I win, tails, you lose. If you passed a test, you were probably dead or permanently marked. So if you failed, well, get ready for the bonfire, Zed. And the brutal. The takeaway here is you're better off sticking to modern science for your spooky needs because back then science was much more about confirming your worst fears than uncovering the truth. And witches, well, they never stood a chance. So I want you to share a witch cake with your loved ones this Halloween season.
And maybe save a little piece for your dog.
And let us know if he goes crazy or not.
Yeah.
But Zed, do you know what that music means? I actually don't. You might not even know what that music means because it's slightly different than usual, indicative of the fact that this is indeed a themed episode. So Zed, it is time for our first ever GTH Fright Clinic Fast Fire Questions.
Gordy and Zed's Fast Fire Questions.
That's right, Zed. And as always, we start out with our first question, which is, would you rather?
Would you rather?
Zed, would you rather go trick-or-treating through your childhood neighborhood in a costume, alone, at age 35, or whatever you are right now, and you can't stop until you knock on 50 doors and you trick-or-treat? So, and if your neighborhood is like smaller than 50 houses, guess what, Zed? You're doubling up on some houses. Would you want to do that? So in a costume, and you have to take it seriously. You can't be like, oh, I'm doing this as a bet. You have to go and like literally go to your childhood neighborhood and go door to door. And these people probably have like kids now and they're your age.
I'm not going to take this seriously. Of course I'm going to take it seriously.
Okay, sorry. Of course you would. Stupid of me to even assume that you wouldn't take this seriously. Or, would you rather do that or eat an entire bowl of candy in one night? Like, let's say like you pick some random kid and like his like haul for the night. It's gonna be in a pillowcase or something. I know that is a nightmare for you, Zed. Which one do you do?
This one's easy for me. I go trick or treating. I was looking at ingredients on candy the other day. Couldn't sleep. But yeah, I think what I don't know. What's the problem with a 35-year-old going trick or treating alone and taking it seriously? I think
nothing.
And the costume, I assume, is normal. It's not a Spider-Man costume that's too small.
It's a Spider-Man costume that's too small.
Oh God!
You're gonna offend people when they open the door.
I think I still do that. I think I would rather make this is an opportunity for me to fight against that urge, and to make other people feel more uncomfortable rather than putting poison in my body.
Are you like one of those places that gives out like toothbrushes and like apples and stuff for Thanksgiving for Halloween?
Yeah, I'm gonna leave plastic toothbrushes out for people and get microplastics in the environment. Yeah, real smart.
Fair enough. I deserved that. All right, Zed, it is time for our next question, which is, which would you rather spend time with in a giant terrarium?
Which would you rather spend time with in a giant terrarium?
That's right, Zed. Which would you rather spend time with in a giant terrarium? Would you rather spend 30 years in a giant terrarium with a serial killer, or in a terrarium where the temperature starts at 75 degrees but rises by 1 degree every year? That's 30 years. Let's assume you don't have to worry about the details. What do you got?
All right, well, only question is am I the serial killer's type?
I don't know. You're gonna have to figure that out. I think in 30 years, in a terrarium with one other person, that person's gonna become your type.
Or I'm gonna be their type.
Well, does the answer change if it's a woman serial killer, Zed? Not a serial killer that kills women. I mean, like a serial killer who is a woman.
Should it change? What's wrong with the woman serial killer?
I just mean, wouldn't you rather spend 30 years with a woman serial killer?
She's a Mom, I get she's a serial killer, but she's honestly really nice day to day.
She's super funny.
So she's charming. Yeah. Well, let's hope she's funny.
All right, what would you rather? 30 years with the degrees going up one degree a year, so that starts at 75. It'll be 105 by the time your 66th birthday when you're getting out of there.
That's the worst time for it to be 105. I think I go serial killer, and I know they're a serial killer, right? I'm not going in blind.
That's right. You
Yeah.
know it. So it's not quite your worst fear.
Yeah. Ooh, actually, I'm gonna go temperature, because I think I would slowly adapt to the heat, and as I get older, yeah, sure, I die older around 60 from heat stroke, but I don't have that that constant sort of fear in the back of my head that my neighbor could kill me at any moment. I think that's worth it.
I think that's a good answer. And I will be there to pick you up when you get out on your 30th anniversary of being there. Well, Zed, it is time for our final Halloween-themed fast-fire question. Is the one that is not a question. It is Shock the Dog.
Shock the Dog.
Zed, did you know that the original jack-o'-lanterns were carved out of turnips, not pumpkins? That's
Whoa.
right. Yeah, centuries ago. The Irish used turnips to ward off evil spirits during Samhain. I don't know how to say these old Irish words, but it's like this Halloween's like Celtic ancestor. You know, it's like the Celtic cousin, Sammy. The real shocker here is that turnips were terrifyingly ugly and not at all easy to carve. So when Irish immigrants came to America and found pumpkins, they were like, whoa, why are we using these ugly ass turnips for let's swap these out and use these like really awesome bright orange plump pumpkins. And so I think that's a lot more fun. Isn't that fun, Seth? Isn't that silly?
That is silly. Just me bringing my little turnip to play dolls with the other kids, and like, oh, his name's Turnpy and the devil's afraid of him. The other kids screaming.
But he doesn't have any plastic in him. All right.
Right.
So you feel good. Your kids are going to grow up with turnip toys, and it's going to be good for the world. I like that. Yeah, turnips. I actually saw some pictures of carved turnips, and they're pretty creepy looking.
Oh, really?
Cool. I recommend you look it up.
Maybe they'd be better than pumpkins. Maybe it's time to switch back.
Yeah, it's time to switch back. Maybe we can start something here.
Time to turn up.
That is awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening to this spooky episode of Going Through Health with Gordy and Zed. Listen each week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. New episodes available early Monday morning. Follow us and rate us 5 stars or whatever the most is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. At goingthroughhealth.podcast on Instagram. Give us a follow. Make sure you got to see my get up this week. At least give me that. And any questions? Fans of the Crucible, hit us up, GordyandZed@gmail.com. We will try to answer them. Happy Halloween, Zed.
Happy Halloween, Gordy. In time for your freaky skeleton ass to
Go back to hell. Where you came from.
Fuck it, I'm going. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Happy Halloween.
Hey, this is Zed. This podcast is intended solely for general informational purposes and does not represent the provision of medical advice or the practice of any professional healthcare services. No clinician-patient relationship is formed. Nice try. And the use of the information provided or materials linked is at the user's own risk. The content of this podcast is not meant to replace professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should seek medical advice for any health issues they may have and should consult their healthcare providers for any such concerns.